Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. I'm excited to be here. Good morning, everybody. Welcome, ladies. Come on in. Come on in, ladies. Welcome to Wow Women of Worth Leadership Journeys of the Least Likely. Come on in. Good morning. Comment on the chat and give us your name and say hello as you come on into the broadcast. And we are using StreamYard. So if you want us to know your name so we can interact with you when you put your comments, please give access to StreamYard via Facebook, so we can interact and exchange. So this is our monthly interview series where I invite powerful women of God who are moving and shaking in their ministry lanes so we can discuss their leadership, their struggles with mindset, inner healing stuff, and their victories and their lessons learned, because we want to learn from their journeys, because they have had some success. So we want to learn from their journeys, because the group that this is broadcasting from is called Leading from Within. So it is our goal to teach, to train, to coach, to mentor, so we can develop the character, the practices, the mindset, and the inner healing necessary for you to step out and be all that God has called you to be. So the purpose of these monthly broadcasts is for you to know that today's movers and shakers were once sitting where you are sitting today and walking in your shoes, so you can get the courage, the confidence, and the boldness to launch into what God has put in your heart. So for those who do not know me, I am Leontine Oswagwu. I am the go-to leadership, mindset, and inner healing coach for Christian female professionals who feel a call to ministry or faith-based business, and they need help to overcome fear, inadequacy, insecurity, overwhelm, and we help them develop confidence. We receive clarity, and so they can move ahead and be the transformational leaders that God has called them to be. So if this is you, contact us via our website, leadingfromwithin.cc, so we can chat. Welcome again. Welcome, ladies. As you come in, say hello. Welcome again to this month's broadcast. I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. Last month was amazing. We had a great time of interviewing Pastor Gwendolyn Cook. And that was amazing. If you missed that broadcast, go back into the Leading from Within Mindset and Inner Healing Breakthrough Facebook group and check out the recording, or go into our YouTube page, or Swagwa Unlimited life coaching, and you can see that video there. So today I'm extremely excited, because we are interviewing again another phenomenal woman of God, Dr. Pastor Danita Thompson. She's an amazing woman of God. She is a passionate people helper who facilitates bringing emotional and spiritual hope and healing to the hurting. And this stuff kind of really flips my switch, because this is something that is really dear to my heart. So we have a strong connection there. And because we have a lot in common, I'm so passionate about this interview, and I look forward to it. So I'm extremely grateful that she has said yes to this morning's interview and this broadcast. So I'm going to welcome to the broadcast Pastor Danita Thompson. Good morning. Good
Good
morning, Pastor Thompson.
morning. Good
Good
morning. Good
morning.
morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be with the women of God on this morning. I'm looking forward to this interview.
I am excited to be here. Thank you so much. Welcome, ladies. Chat with us. Put your questions in the chat if you have any, and we'll address them as we go along. So before we get in, Pastor Danita, tell us a little bit about yourself in brief, so we can get a little bit to know you before we dive right in.
Yes, so my husband and we are the pastors of Mending Hearts Kingdom Church in Florence. And I also have a mental health practice. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I have a mental health practice also in Florence, and it's Mending Hearts Family Counseling. And at the practice, we minister to over 200 people a week. And I'm just excited about what God is doing at Mending Hearts. And then I also have my Dr. Danita live that I do every Thursday, and it's called Baggage Claim. Unpack Your
Love it.
Bags with Dr. Danita.
Love it. Love
Yeah.
it. Love it. That's awesome. Thank you so much. We do know that you're really, really changing lives. That's why we reached out, because we know that there's so much that we can glean. I can glean, and others can glean from your experience. So let's dive right in. So, Pastor Danita, what gets you up in the morning? What are you living for?
I live for purpose. I'm just really excited about what God has called me to do, and I live to be able to see people's lives change. I live to be able to do this ministry. And I'm on the other side of healing. And so with God having healed me and healed my marriage and still healing my family, I'm just passionate about being able to do that for others.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's all, all of us. I'm sorry. That's all of us. We should live for the same thing. We should live to be able to impact other people's lives,
Yeah.
because we have been placed on this earth just for that, to make a difference, to be examples of Christ. So
Hmm.
I really appreciate that. So this broadcast is titled Leadership Journeys of the Least Likely. So what makes you the least likely when you think about the subtitle, Pastor Danita?
So I was thinking about that. I was born in Brooklyn and raised in public housing. My my mom became a single mom when I was 12, and she kind of like just went into survival mode. So I
Mhm.
never really grew up with what I would say with dreams and goals and plans for life. It was just survive, and be
Mhm.
able to do whatever we needed to do to have a roof over our head and to be able to eat. And so when God just started opening doors for me that I never even dreamed about. Like a lot of people like, oh, I want to be when I grow up. I want to be. I honestly didn't have a lot of I want to be's. And
Mm.
it's just to me so amazing that God would continue to open up doors even beyond my natural dreams that I
Wow.
didn't even have.
Oh, oh my God. And so many of us can relate to this, because, that we have these stories where, that are seemingly, that are either have pain attached to them or are
Hmm.
totally insignificant, where we have been dismissed and rejected and all of those things, or abandoned.
Hmm.
And now God has chosen to use us, to impact the world. So this is really, really, I mean, it speaks to the nature of our God, to the love that He has.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. I know that you and your husband, you mentioned it, pastor an amazing church called Mending Hearts Kingdom Church in South Jersey.
Hmm.
And I have a couple of questions. How did you know for sure? Because I know that in this audience that we're ministering today, there's a lot of us who feel a call to pastor and all those things, and with all of the the intimidations and insecurities that come along with that. How did you know for sure that God was calling you and your husband to pastor? And what was that like? How was the journey like?
Ooh, um, a journey indeed.
Oh.
And knowing for sure was very, very challenging. Only because my husband and I had spent a lot of time. I was born and raised in a church, and he was born and
Mhm.
raised in a church. And we spent so much time giving and giving and giving and working in ministry. And we had gotten to the place we weren't kids, we weren't
Mhm.
young adults when the Lord
Right.
called us. Our children were already adults. And so we were ready, honestly, Leontine, to go
Mhm.
and sit in the back of some mega church
Wow.
and just rest.
Mm-hmm.
We were
Oh.
in the process of leaving a church that we were helping out, and
Mm-hmm.
we were going to transition out, and we just looked at each other and said, let's just go rest.
Oh my
And
God.
my husband was already 50,
Uh-huh.
and or yes, he was already 51, and I was 48.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, and he says, no, weeks later, he says, I didn't want to say this while we were having this conversation about, resting. He said, but I didn't, that's not what I heard from the Lord. And I'm like, well, what did you hear?
Mm. Yeah, what did you hear?
What did you hear? Because I ain't hearing nothing but rest.
Mm.
And when he started talking about it, I'm like, what? Like, that has never been a
Mhm,
thought. It had never been a conversation. My husband
mhm,
was a musician, is a musician,
mm.
and he's
Uh-huh.
always been a musician. He wasn't a preacher. And I'm like,
Mhm.
what? This is crazy. And I just thought it was crazy.
Uh-huh.
And and so I said, well, how about Bible study? How about we just have, some people in our
Okay,
home? Like, no,
some
not a
little.
church. And so the next week or so, I
Mhm,
tuned into my former church that I had never really been able to, because we were working. When you're working in ministry, you don't get to, tune in on Sundays to other
mhm,
churches. So I tuned in, and it was the first time that I had tuned into my former church in like 2 years. And they had
mhm,
a visiting preacher that day.
mhm.
Every word that came out of that woman's mouth
My God.
was a confirmation. And I was like, I don't want this to be a confirmation. I was kicking and screaming. I have
Oh
to
my
admit
goodness.
that I was kicking and screaming the whole time.
Mhm.
But I am so grateful for the yes. So grateful for
Amen.
the yes. Even though we're older, and I kept saying, God, like, what are we gonna do at this age? Most people are starting churches in their 20s. Like, what are we gonna
Yeah.
do? And he had a specific plan, like really specific, that
Mhm.
we were going to bridge the gap. We noticed that
Mm.
we grew up very legalistically,
Yeah.
and so we knew
Oh, yes.
everything that doesn't work, but we
Mm-hmm.
also saw that the baby was just being thrown out with the bathwater. And there's this
Mm.
whole generation that knows the word, that can exegete the word, that can dig into the word and get all this revelation, but they have no revelation as to how to live the word out.
Talk about it.
And
Mm.
so he was really specific with us that you are going to bridge this gap between all of these young people that know the word but don't know how to live it. And
Mm.
that has been what we've stayed in our lane. That has
Mm-hmm.
been what we were doing, what we have been doing. And
Mm-hmm.
God has blessed it. He's blessed it.
Oh, amen.
Yeah.
This is so powerful. This is liberating for a few reasons, right? Because you said when God gave you the call, you were ready to go and rest somewhere, right? And God said, nope, this is not the time for you to rest. There's so many of us who can relate to this, where
Mm-hmm.
we get into a certain age where you said, okay, because we see all these young preachers popping out of seminary, and they're 20 something
Yeah.
years old, and just doing all this great stuff. And then if we're in our in our 40s or 50s or something like this, we feel kind of intimidated and just like, God, really? I mean, how am I going
Mm-hmm.
to compete? What are people going to say? How am I going to look stepping out just now in this late stage of my life? So you have hit something that I believe is touching a lot of us, and a lot of people in our audience, because we're disqualifying ourselves because of our age.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, disqualifying ourselves because of our age, seeing how God cannot use us, and seeing and just retiring ourselves prematurely from doing
Mm-hmm.
God's call on our
Mm-hmm.
lives. So this is really going to liberate a lot of people. Yeah, and I appreciate you. I appreciate your transparency there. So that's awesome. So the next question, I believe that every successful woman in leadership, um, or in ministry or in the marketplace, has had to break barriers at some point in their lives in order to have their voices heard, right? Simply
Mm-hmm.
because of the type of culture and the historical context and things like this that we have experienced. And so what is one barrier that you have had to break in order to establish yourself as a leader in your own right, either in your practice or either in corporate America or even in the church.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, and there were barriers in both. But
Mm-hmm.
in the church, when God called us to pastor, I grew up, as I said, very, very legalistically, and women weren't pastors.
Oh,
And so the idea of going back to the community, which I grew up in, and saying that, my church community, and saying that I was a pastor. They still don't call me pastor,
oh
but,
wow.
they only call me first lady. Not that,
Oh wow.
I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
say only, because, that's a significant role,
Oh,
but God,
definitely.
God called me to pastor. And so,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, I felt very uncomfortable saying that I'm a pastor,
Mm.
because it's just that legalistically, in that church or that environment, in that community, we
Mm-hmm.
just didn't have that platform. And so
Yes.
that was definitely a barrier internally that I had
Mm-hmm.
to deal with. I know what God had called me to, but wondering,
Yes.
how is it going to translate to the people that, I'm most familiar with? And so
Mm. Oh
that
wow.
was.
So this is powerful as well. When I started these broadcasts, my first guest was Pastor Aisha Edmondson, and we did touch upon that because she's very intentional about letting people know that she is a pastor, and right,
Mhm.
to be seen in that lens, because people assume that when you're in the church and you and your husband start out this church, you're first lady, you're first
Yes.
lady, and
Yes.
you're just kind of like the person in the shadows while your husband is up front. But God calls couples together.
Mhm. Mhm.
God calls
Mhm.
couples together, and there's some instances for sure where the woman is maybe on the background and kind of supportive, playing a more of a supportive role. But in some instances, they're equally supposed to pastor. They're equally
Mhm.
supposed to pastor. And some people have this paradigm where it's hard for them to kind of embrace the woman as a co-pastor next to her husband. So this is
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
a barrier that many women have had to face
Mhm.
in your situation, and that others are going to face, and could be intimidating, also can be
Yeah.
intimidating and preventing some ladies from stepping up and saying, I am pastor as well, because
Mhm.
because of the fear of judgment, and etc. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what,
So
Lansing, to
definitely
take.
that's great. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. To take it
Hmm.
a little further, a second barrier, the
Hmm.
Lord really began to
Yeah.
help us understand our roles as a team. And
Hmm.
um, and
Yes.
we realized that my husband was undeniably called to the office of a pastor, but my call was to the
Mm.
office of the apostle. And that made me freeze in
Mm.
my tracks,
Wow.
because as an
Mm.
apostle, you lead out, you get the blueprint, and I'm like, God, this goes against every single thing that I grew up on. Like, no way can you give me the blueprint. That has to come to my husband. No way. And so
Wow.
I believe that this too will be freeing for some women who it is working for me and my husband. He has
Mhm.
no problem with it. I don't overstep him, in his leadership role, but God gives me the blueprint, period.
Wow. You know what? You just changed my life. You really, literally changed my life, because my husband and I, same thing. We were. I'm in my mid 40s. My husband is in his early 50s, and God has been putting this heavy call on our lives to begin and step out and be pastor. But God has given me the blueprint. He has the pastoral anointing, but God has given me
Hmm.
the clear blueprint. And
Hmm.
I have questioned God. I said, God, why? That's not how it's supposed to work.
Right.
God, you have liberated me so much. I don't feel like a weirdo anymore. I don't feel like I'm. Thank you so much for your transparency, because you know, I want, typically it's the role that the man will typically hold, right?
Yeah.
So, but the call to pastor is totally undeniably on him, but the blueprint is seems to be where what I carry,
Right.
and it was kind of scary initially. So I appreciate your total transparency, and you have changed my life. Wait till I share that with him. Oh my God.
Awesome.
Woo! So as part of next question, as part of my husband and I's business, we have leading from within, obviously. Um, and God has revealed to us that there are many people who are hurting, people hurting themselves and hurting their organizations because of a lack of emotional freedom. And we need to do something about that. I know that I was researching a little bit about you, and I know that you have recently founded something called Hope
Hope
Haven
Haven.
Mending Hearts, where you strengthen and restore faith leaders in need of emotional healing. Tell us a little bit about how that came about, and what is the greatest emotional struggle that you see with leaders as you work with them?
I am so glad. I'm so glad you asked that question. I was going to talk about Hope Haven at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So Hope Haven was birthed out of after I became a pastor and realized that there are so many pastors who love the Lord, who have a fidelity to the word, so many leaders. And in that, they still are so broken. They haven't gotten their soul cleansed. They,
Mm.
spiritually, they have
Yeah.
studied the word, they have done, those their due diligence and being able to prepare, but they're bleeding all over their people because
Yes.
their
Oh my
soul
God.
is still wounded. And so
Yes.
I began to just, as I watch how people, great leaders, would rise to the pinnacle of
Mm-hmm.
their leadership success as
Yes.
pastors, or what leaders, worship leaders, just to fall and not
Yes.
fall themselves, but bring other people down with them. I just kept
Yes.
thinking to myself, God, I know that these leaders, it's not a matter of them not loving you. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
matter of them not having a fidelity to your word. They just not have not been emotionally healed.
Wow.
And the enemy will just wait
Yes.
patiently
Yes.
until you get to that place to just clobber you with your stuff from the
Mm.
past. And I
That.
just began to say, God, I want to see leaders free so that they can get to the place where they can help people walk in freedom, because not only leaders are bound, but their people are bound. And if the
Yes.
leaders are not going to be transparent, and they're
Mm-hmm.
not going to take the one of the first steps towards emotional and mental health, then they can't expect that their people will. And they'll
Yeah.
just go around in circle, people hurting
Mm.
people, leaders coming into leadership as orphans, with the orphan spirit. And
Yes.
you can't lead people with an orphan spirit, having
Mm.
expectations of them that they can't even provide, because you're looking for gaps to be filled that
Yes.
can't be filled by those people. And then when they don't, you get disappointed and you're bleeding all
Oh.
it's it becomes a mess. And so Hope Haven was born out of that. I want to provide education, just like pastors go to seminary to be
Yes.
prepared to share the gospel. I want people to be prepared to
Mm-hmm.
love people and love people
Yes.
well,
Mm.
and be able to be prepared emotionally for this
Yeah.
call. This call has a significant emotional weight. It's
Oh.
not just about knowing the word. And
Yes.
so being prepared, and I ultimately I want a retreat center. I want
Mm.
faith leaders to have a place where they can go and get refreshed and revived, because the call is just very weighty, and it can be
Wow.
very draining. It's rewarding. Your yes is
Yeah.
rewarding, but
Mm-hmm.
it's also heavy, and you
It's
need
very
to
heavy.
take a break every now and then. You need to be recharged emotionally and mentally.
Oh, that is so, so powerful. And I think about, all throughout the years where you've seen in the news, we have pastors who've died of drug overdoses, and we have
Yes.
pastors who are, apologizing to their wives every other week for having, sex outside of marriage. And we have all this dysfunction that's coming out that the enemy is using to discredit the
Mhm,
church,
mhm.
discredit the name of our God, because leaders are not willing or don't have the humility enough to say, hey, I am struggling in this area. I need to sit down somewhere and have somebody minister to me like yourself, and have God process them through this,
Mhm.
through these wounds that they are carrying, that is hurting
Yeah.
not only themselves, their congregations, hurting the name of Jesus and hurting all of us.
Yes, yes. And because leaders aren't transparent, their people they don't believe that they can go to them and say, I'm struggling, I'm bound. My husband and I have a testimony of testimonies about that, about loving God, but being so bound in our stuff and not knowing who we could go and speak to as a married couple. And so, yeah.
Oh, that's so powerful. That is so powerful and so needed. So yeah, so if you are watching and there's something that is resonating with you as it relates to Hope Haven Mending Hearts, contact Pastor Danita Thompson, and they will definitely be a blessing to you, and help you through all of those things.
Mhm.
So Pastor Danita, what is your greatest leadership struggle as a pastor and as a therapist? What is your greatest struggle in leadership?
Well, it has shifted
Mm-hmm.
over time, but I come back to delegating. Delegating is
Mm-hmm.
sometimes difficult because either I haven't gotten to the place where I lay it out well
Mm-hmm.
enough, or
Yes.
I just feel that most often people don't finish to the end. And
Mm.
then I always feel like if they're not going to finish to the end, I might as well do it myself.
Oh,
But that then brings me back to being overloaded, overwhelmed, too
yes.
many things on my plate. And so those are areas that I am definitely praying about in that area of delegation and,
Mm.
just getting people to the place where they feel empowered to,
Mm.
to complete the work to the end.
That's awesome. That is something that I really definitely can relate to. Because as you know, I lead an organization called Liberating Tamar, and we have a team. We have a team. We've had a team for the past few years. Some people have dropped off, some people have come on, but throughout the years, I just struggled with delegating, because maybe it's something I just have to make sure that the people are trained and empowered, like you said, to do the stuff that is
Mhm.
required of them. But sometimes I have that struggle as well. Might as well do it myself. I'll do it quicker and I'll do it better. And what happens when you have this type of mindset is you're overwhelmed. You're
Yes,
overwhelmed, and it
absolutely.
kind of defeats the purpose of having a team, to be honest.
Right,
And so that
right.
is a struggle that I can definitely relate to. So thank you for that. Um, so I know that there are probably many, many success stories that you can share with our audience, but tell us about the one thing that you are the proudest about in your ministry or in your business.
Well, in ministry, I am proudest about seeing how those things that were prophetically spoken
Mm-hmm.
are actually and they're coming to pass because I I walk in obedience. Like I really say, God, every single day, I want to say yes and I want to walk in obedience. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying that I'm perfect, but God has honored. I've spent so many years not being obedient
Oh.
that that I decided if I'm going to start this ministry at almost 50, I'm going to have to be obedient. I don't have
Oh.
time for messing up and redoing we don't have time for that. I'm going to listen and I'm going to listen clear.
That's right.
And so I'm very proud that our ministry, one that people struggle a lot with, is getting young adults to be actively engaged. Our
Mhm.
ministry is right now during the pandemic, 98% young adult led.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And I'm talking under 30.
That's awesome.
And and because that was that was the primary thing that the Lord said, that we would bridge the gap. To
Mm.
see now these young adults just coming into their own and finding their place in ministry and loving the Lord, and we being their spiritual parents is just
Yeah.
so rewarding. And my own three children who
Mm,
are adults
mhm.
are actively involved in the ministry. And so that I'm just most excited about
That's
and most
awesome.
proud of. Yeah.
That's awesome because as we, I mean, looking at different pastors and different churches, and the struggle that I think a lot of them have is remaining relevant, remaining
Mhm.
relevant in this whole changing culture, remaining relevant to the younger generation, to the and having them embrace and come and participate and become involved in their ministries.
Mhm.
And I see that you guys have bridged the gap. Not only are you relevant, but because of your transparency, right? Because of your transparency, the young people feel that they can relate.
Mhm.
They are
Mhm.
connected to what you are sharing. And that's why they're flocking, they're embracing, they're coming, they're enjoying themselves, they're participating, and they're growing. So that's a testament to your leadership and your husband's, how you are able to speak a language that they can understand and that they can relate to, which many pastors struggle with these days.
Mhm.
So which puts the whole ministry at in jeopardy, in jeopardy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
Well,
awesome.
thank you.
My husband and I are leadership and personal development coaches, and we're kind of addicted to learning and personal growth and all of those things. And what is the one thing that you do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to continue to grow and develop yourself in leadership? And what are some of the things that you can share with us that we can replicate?
Yeah, I find that there's so many areas that, I have all of these compartments of
Hmm.
areas that I have to grow in. I have to grow as a professional mental health, as a mental health professional. I have to grow as a pastor in my
Hmm.
call, the office that I'm called to. I have to grow
Yes.
as, just as a business leader. And
Yes.
so I just find myself, I walk every day. And
Hmm.
so I walk an hour and a half. And so
Wow.
during that time, I take that time because I need to, because I'm so busy, I need to
Hmm.
incorporate things at the same time.
Yes.
So I'm
I hear you.
walking and I take, the first bit of my walk for meditation and for
Hmm.
prayer.
Hmm.
But then the other portion of my walk, I'm listening to some sort of teaching on a
Yes.
YouTube or an audio book or something of that nature. And one day it will be for mental health, another day it will be for ministry.
Hmm.
And I love to learn as well. And so that's pretty much the way that I guide my life
Oh,
in
that's
terms of
awesome.
learning.
That's awesome. And when you say you walk for an hour and a half, I wish I could have walked for an hour and a half. Recently, my husband has put me on a workout regimen where I get on the treadmill for about half an hour every morning. And this is because it's an area that I've struggled with my weight and all those things throughout the years. So, but I realized that in order to be a leader of any sort, in order to live long and to be able to do
Hmm.
purpose, have to be healthy. Have to be
Yes,
healthy. So
absolutely.
walking is definitely something that I've started doing on the treadmill, and I intend to go to an hour and a half. Not quite, be about 25, 30 minutes, but this is something definitely I can relate to, and also developing in different areas. So if you are watching us and you're resonating with what Dr. Danita is sharing with us, you have to continue to grow and to develop, and because you develop in your field, in the mental health field. Because once you're
Hmm.
credentialed, many people think, okay, I have the credentials, I'm it. But you have to continue to develop and
Hmm.
grow in the field because everything evolves. You have to grow in leadership. You have to grow in your office as well as a pastor. Once you're a pastor, that's it. That's not just it. That's not the end of the road. You have to continue to grow and develop for our own benefit, for the benefit of the
Yeah.
kingdom, and for the benefit of the people that God has assigned for us to lead. So that is awesome. Thank you so much for that. Um, Next question. You may or may not know this. I had a very traumatic childhood. It was severe, that had severe ramifications, what leaked into many areas of my life as an adult. You mentioned a little bit about your childhood and
Hmm.
and things like that in the beginning, but tell us a little bit about how some of the things that have happened to you in your childhood has impacted your leadership today.
Yeah, I didn't realize, as most people don't, while you're going through it, while you're living
Yeah.
it, you're just kind of living it. And then when you become an adult, you realize how much what you experienced
Mhm.
impacted you. And so I don't really know your story, but I know you birthed Liberating Tamar, and I know the mission of that
Yeah,
ministry, so I can surmise your story.
definitely.
I was molested at 8,
Wow.
and for a period of time, but I was molested by a female,
Oh,
and
wow.
that left me confused because if you're not experiencing pain in your
Mhm.
molestation, and
Mhm.
she actually awakened my sexual
Mhm.
desires very early, and
Yes.
because it wasn't painful, I was confused as to why I actually liked it.
Mm.
And I was, as I grew older, I was very embarrassed that I actually looked forward to being babysat by this woman,
Wow.
and I could not figure out, and I didn't tell my mother until I was already married with children. I was
Yes.
27,
Hmm.
and I realized that she had awakened in me, and because it wasn't a painful experience,
Hmm.
it that was the reason why I was enjoying it, because you don't just get your sexual you don't just get those feelings
Hmm.
because you get married or you're an adult.
That's right.
They're with you, right?
Hmm.
And so that was one of the first experiences that I was just very confused and didn't
Mm.
have anybody to talk that through. And then my dad left when I was 12,
Hmm.
and the way in which he left, he just said, "I'm going to the store to get a pack of cigarettes." And
Wow.
he literally did not come back.
Wow.
And I didn't see him again for like a year.
Wow.
And so that I didn't know that I was going through trauma, but I had a 6th grade teacher
Hmm.
who one day he says something is not right. And back in the day, you could leave the premises for lunch or whatever. He took me to the cafe next door, and he
Hmm.
says something is not right. What's going on?
Hmm.
And that's that's when I told him that my dad had left, and it was just amazing how God had him to just speak into my life. He was a Jewish
Yeah.
man, but he nurtured me and spoke into my life, and he noticed that I was just not behaving like I used to. And
Wow.
so, and I also got married very young.
Hmm.
I considered myself a child getting married at 18. And
Hmm.
so that was also quite traumatic,
Hmm.
getting married at 18. And for me and my husband, it was literally a recipe for disaster.
Oh, yeah, I
That's
can
why we
imagine.
have, such a testimony and a story.
Hmm.
And so, consequently, I struggled, with my dad leaving. I struggled with, wanting acceptance and validation, and looking, even though I was married, still looking for attention with other
Yes.
men. And it was just very disastrous, needing
Hmm.
control, because I just felt like, as a child, there was, things that, just were not, that were just so shaky and unpredictable, and so
Yes.
needing to control once I became an adult was huge for me. Yeah. And
Mm.
I cared a lot about what other people thought.
Oh, my
that
God.
that was very crippling early on.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. That's powerful. That's powerful because I can relate to so many of the things that you said. Yes, I too was sexually molested. I mean, it started from the age of 3 up until
Mm,
I was like 6 years old, by one of our neighbors. Growing up in Africa, I'm originally from Burkina Faso. It's in West Africa. Where you have those big compounds and you have people coming in and out and all that
mhm,
kind of stuff. And he was a neighbor, and so that impacted me tremendously because I had nightmares and things like that for
mm,
years and years and years, and it kept happening and reoccurring in my mind for decades. And when you talk about seeking attention and acceptance and all that kind of stuff, that led to a whole lot of sexual promiscuity and things like that
Mm-hmm.
growing up as a teenager and as a young adult. So and that leaks into leadership, that leaks
Mm-hmm.
into anything that you want to do for God. It does leak, and like you mentioned earlier about your ministry to leaders, with the Hope Haven, that leaks into everything that we want to do from God, um,
Yeah.
because we have to guard our heart, like the scripture says, with all, guard your heart, for out of it flows the issues of life. So
Mm-hmm.
I've observed how it has impacted me as in my relationships, in my career, in my ministry, in everything that I do, because you're seeking acceptance. You want people to like you. You want people manipulate you, and all of those things, and
Mm-hmm.
that can really sabotage a lot of what you're trying to do for God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So that's
Mm-hmm.
powerful there. That's powerful. So if you are watching this and you can relate to a lot of what is being said, as it relates to the impact of trauma on leadership, and you need some ministry, you need some help, you need people to help you process this, Dr. Danita is here, and also you can reach out to us as well, if you feel inclined to, and just so we can minister to you as well. All right.
Yeah.
So also, next question. I don't have that many friends. I don't have that many friends simply because I'm a somewhat of a private person. Even though I do a lot of things out there in social media world and all those things, I'm a very private person, and I don't have a lot of friends, but I have a lot of mentors, and you being one of them. And I have a lot of, I may not have formal mentorship relationships, but I have people that I look up to, people that I glean from, that I
Mm-hmm.
watch, that I learn from every day, that inspire me. Who are some of the people that that have made a difference in your life, that you have gleaned from, and that you have learned from, and that you aspire to every day? Because I always seek to kind of uh, get a sneak peek into people's the people that people learn from, and learn, so I can learn from them potentially as well.
Yeah, I think again, even in this with this question, I have people that I have learned from for whatever area. So for like for parenting, I grew up in the I grew up in a church where literally every mother had a belt in their hand, and and they just would just swipe their kids, across the pews, and I just thought, I don't want to be like that. And then when I transitioned to another ministry that was a lot more progressive,
Mhm,
the first lady of that ministry, she mothered with such grace,
mhm,
and I would just watch her. And she was I really she's younger than I am, but I really looked up to her as an amazing mom, and
mhm,
how she mothered her children with grace, and she would talk to them, and they they were obedient children, but I she didn't have to sit there with a belt and beat them while service was going on. And so that's just one that came back to me as it relates to being a mom.
mhm,
And I for ministry, there's I don't know if mom, a lot of people know Mom Graham, but she's in the Church of God in Christ, and that's where I grew up, in the Church of God in Christ. But
okay.
she was very different, not as legalistic as many that I had encountered, and she's just such an awesome, graceful woman of God, and I watch her. I'm in relationship with her, but I just watched the way in which she handles herself in ministry, and she and her husband pastor as well. And so I need someone that I could be able to look and see, like, how does this work, with the
Mm.
husband and the wife. And she's the one that is out in the public, and her
Yes.
husband isn't. And so that's kind of like
Mm.
me and my husband. He's not in the public like I am. And
Yes.
so I'm I look at her to get understanding. And then there's various Christian leaders that I watch, social media, YouTubes, and
Mhm.
I just peek into their leadership skills and their styles, and
Mhm.
that's helpful as well. I had mentors in the field. When I was going through my internship, I had
Yeah.
an amazing man of God. I interned at a Christian counseling center,
Mhm.
and he was just so amazing in his mentorship.
Mm.
Hmm.
That's powerful. That is absolutely powerful. And what is one critical thing, leadership advice that you have gleaned from, from one of your mentors?
Um, I think I've learned that it's important to have good people on your team
Mm.
and to be able to vet people well
Yes.
and take time to develop your team and not just throw people on just because you have a need.
Yes.
And I feel like, especially at the counseling center, that has been something that the Lord has really blessed me with, an amazing team.
Mhm.
Besides, it was prophetically spoken that everybody I needed, everything that I needed, that I would have a
Mhm.
team that I could trust, that I could leave, I can go off and do other things that God has called me to do,
Yeah.
and know that everything back home would, be safe and be taken care of. And so I think, really being prayerful and discerning about the people that you surround yourself with in terms of your team
Yeah.
is very important.
That's powerful. And that's you said something about just not putting people there just because you have a need. And
Hmm.
that's something definitely that many have struggled with, and myself also. As you know, 7 years ago we were starting Liberating Tamar, and there was a need, and then there's people have this shiny object syndrome where, oh, this new gig, oh my goodness, there's this
Hmm.
new thing here, so everybody wants to be on board, everybody wants to be a part of it, and all. And when you're starting, obviously, you have the
You
need,
need. Hmm.
the people, so you take them on board, and throughout the years you find out that they want to be a part of the vision, but they don't want to work the vision. So so yes, having the right people on your team is can definitely make or break everything. So I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah. And in ministry, we struggle with that as well. Small ministry, we need the hands here. You have to have a women's ministry, you have to have a men's ministry, you have to have this, you have to have that. And, just putting people in places because you have to have it. And then we just decided we don't have to
We
have it
don't have to have it.
if no, we don't have to have it. And so we did make several mistakes early on in ministry, just putting people
Yes.
in places, and then realizing we don't absolutely have to have it. If it's not going to function well, then we prefer to wait until God sends us someone who can move that particular ministry forward.
Oh yeah, that's powerful. That's powerful, and that's helping somebody. It's helping somebody. It's helping me. Because you don't have to have everybody in all roles filled at all times, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because you don't want to put the wrong people in a role just because you want a body there. You
Right.
want that to be God led. You want God to select the person, because that can
Hmm.
destroy everything.
Yeah,
So it's
absolutely.
all about praying and trusting that God will lead you to the right people, and that in His time, and having
Yes.
that surrendered posture. So that's awesome. That's awesome. So the next question that I have for you, as we wind down, getting towards the hour here,
Hmm.
um, what is, I know you do a lot. Like you said, you have the practice, you have the church, you have the mentorship, you have so much going on. And how do you how do you balance all of those things? What are some of the boundaries that you have to set in order to keep your sanity and being a wife and being in business and all of those things?
Yeah, this area, Leontine, that is one that I struggled with for a long time because I do have. I think I was catching up on my dreams when I didn't dream earlier. Then the dreams just started coming and coming and coming,
No,
and so I,
can
yeah,
relate to that.
having so many different hats that I wear. One thing that I had that people were telling me, people that are close to me were telling me for a couple of years, you need to have a personal assistant. And I'm like, oh, personal assistant, that makes me sound like, I'm,
I know,
and
right?
yeah. And I'm like, how can I like tell people, oh, speak to my personal assistant, So I struggled. And last year I made the decision I am going to have, and the Lord had really given me someone that I knew that I could trust, but I just felt very uncomfortable with the whole idea of having a personal assistant. But it has made my life, it has made my life so, it lifted so many responsibilities and burdens and time consuming things that I, just was trying to juggle all, on my own. And so having a personal assistant is really, really a blessing. She just keeps my life in order and, just,
I believe it.
it's just been a blessing.
I believe.
And yeah, so, my children are adults, and so they don't require, although parenting never ends, it's
Yeah.
just a different
Mhm.
transition and a different style, a different relationship, but parenting never ends. But of
Mhm.
course, they can do for themselves, they're self sufficient. So I don't have, young children.
Yeah.
And my husband is very, very low maintenance. Thank you, Jesus.
Jesus.
So
I love it.
so he is just go and do your thing. Go and do your thing.
Mhm.
He's just so supportive in that regard.
Mhm.
And so and he's retired. So he has a
Yeah.
lot of time to, we can eat breakfast together. He's not rushing
Yeah.
off to work.
Mhm.
And we take breaks like quarterly, and we'll go sleep over someplace. It may not be far, but
Mhm.
we take those recharging breaks, and we vacation regularly. So
Oh,
where
that's
we go,
awesome.
like go
Mhm.
far.
Mhm.
And so that's what really sustains me. Definitely having the personal assistant and the boundaries that I am learning to set. I'm a people person, and so I am connected with all of the members of the church. It's not a huge ministry,
Mhm.
but we're huge in vision, but
Yeah.
we're not huge yet in terms of
Powerful.
people.
Yes.
But everybody has my cell.
Mhm.
And I've been told that I'm way too accessible, but I just
Mm.
really love people. So I'm getting to the place now that I am putting time frames,
Mhm.
so ministry will be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and these time frames, for the church. If you want to reach
Yeah.
out to me, these are the times. And so I'm
Yeah.
trying to now compartmentalize a little bit because everything kind of like does, mesh into, and it makes it a little bit more challenging to switch my mindset. Okay, now I'm talking church, now I'm talking business, now I'm talking, yeah. So
Mhm.
I now do for my live on Thursdays, I do
Mhm.
content on Mondays. And so I'm
Yeah.
I'm compartmentalizing that way, and I try not to allow people to cross my boundary.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You said so much there. And myself, our whole organization, ministry, and everything is online, right?
Mhm.
So I find myself having to do all kinds of stuff constantly, 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 and I was being burnt out. I was being burnt out. So recently I've hired my 10-year-old daughter, who is a genius. She's a whiz at social media and at graphics and all of those things. And I've
Nice.
recruited her to take on a lot of the load that I'm carrying. So that has helped tremendously. So I can definitely relate with the when you talk about the personal assistant. I still do need a personal assistant
Mhm.
for all of the other stuff, but but I can definitely relate with the load that it's has removed on you to free you up so you can do all of the other wear all of the other hats that you mentioned there, and also having a low maintenance husband. I have a low maintenance
Mhm.
husband, so I think God knows something, right?
Indeed.
God knows something. These women slash apostle anointing office, we need low maintenance husband to
Hmm.
survive. So I can definitely relate to that as well. So this is awesome, and also setting up the boundaries. Like I'm gonna do this, that, and the third on these certain days, and I can't. You can contact me on these other days, and on different days you cannot because I'm busy doing other things. So it's just basically setting up the right boundaries and holding them,
Hmm.
and sticking to them.
Hmm.
That's really
Yeah.
definitely helpful. So thank you so much for sharing that. So as we begin to wrap up, I have one strong question that I have to ask
Hmm.
as a therapist and as a woman who's gone through a lot yourself, as you mentioned. There are many women in our audience, including myself, who are doing things and who are aspiring to do things, but we feel like some way, somehow, they may feel like they need to be completely healed, completely whole before they can step out and do anything for God. What would you
Mm.
tell a woman like that? They're letting insecurities and fears and shame and all of those things cripple them to the point where they feel like, okay, I'm just going to sit here and wait for God to set me completely free before I can move forward.
Yeah, I think that, sometimes stepping into purpose can be your healing agent.
I love it.
And as you begin to walk out what God has called you to do, as you engage in relationships and different things, you start to see areas that need to be addressed.
Yes.
And the most important thing is, as God reveals to you, you go ahead and begin to work on, those areas. I would say, though, Leontine, there are some things, especially I'm really passionate about when you are called to lead people, you
Yes.
need to make sure, go to counseling first
Yes.
and begin to, those areas that you begin to recognize that won't make for good leadership as it relates to caring for people, then go
Yes.
ahead and work on those things before you actually step into that leadership role.
Yes.
But I don't think that healing is a journey. I'm
Yes.
still healing and helping
Yep.
people while I'm healing.
Yes.
I have ministered through lots of pain
Yes.
because life's issues don't just stop happening. Something new can happen that can rock you and shake
Mm.
you and take you to lots of places
Yes.
emotionally. And
Yeah.
so, and then you find yourself needing someone to come alongside you and to help you
Mm.
heal in that area. And
Mm.
so healing is not a one and done. You're not going to get to the place where I'm just like, I'm done with
I
this
know, right?
healing.
Oh gosh, that is so liberating. That is so totally liberating. And I do understand what you said about, especially women who have a feel a call to leadership and step out and lead anyone. There's some things that are non-negotiables, right?
Hmm.
You have to get healed from certain things.
Hmm.
That will definitely can destroy somebody else initially. But then again, like you said, stepping out um, is sometimes plays a huge role in your healing. And I have this broadcast called Unleash Your Destiny with Leontine that I do on in this group every Monday. And the
Hmm.
last broadcast was about what does it mean to lead from within? And in that broadcast, I talked about the 10 lepers that met Jesus and asked Jesus for help. And Jesus said, um, go and show yourself to the priest. Jesus did not say anything to them. He did not touch them. He did not minister to them. He said, go and show yourselves to the priest. And
Hmm.
as they went, they began to become healed. So,
Hmm.
so sometimes your healing is in your going, whereas you step out and do what God has instructed you to do, you would begin to progressively get healed. And a lot of us, like you said, I've led for many years, like you said, in pain and just kind of doing things. And God has progressively revealed some things to me, addressed some things along the way, and healed me progressively from certain
Mhm.
things. And I am still healing and becoming more like Christ every day. So I love how you said that. We have to address the things that are critical and urgent, that can destroy lives. Sit down and get some counseling, get
Mhm.
somebody to minister to you up front before you step up. But then again, we're never going to get perfectly healed.
Right.
It's the journey. So we have to trust God and follow His instructions and go, and He will lead us. He
Amen.
will heal us as we move on. So that is
Mhm.
that is powerful. That is powerful. Okay, so we are at 11, but I want to ask one last question
Okay.
for you. So, knowing what you know now and knowing all of this stuff that you have gone through in leadership and ministry as a pastor, as a wife, everything else, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self today?
I would tell my 20-year-old self to take time to get to know yourself.
Mm,
Your brain is still developing, you're
yes,
still coming into your own, explore life, weigh your options,
yes.
follow the Lord early. Um,
Hmm.
Walk in obedience early, you can avoid a many pitfalls. If you
Yes.
walk in obedience early, it's okay to change your mind. It's
Hmm.
okay to explore different avenues of life at that young age.
Yes. That's powerful.
Most of all, say yes early and
Mm.
avoid some of those
Oh.
pitfalls. Yeah.
Say yes early. And I lied. One more question, Pastor Danita. What is one last advice that you have for our audience and for myself as we continue this leadership thing, as some of us step into leadership and as others, continue? What critical advice do you have for us as we go?
I think it's important to have. You said that you don't have a lot of friends, but you don't have to have a lot of friends, but you do need some
Yes.
supportive sisterhood.
Yes.
You need, I know the Bible says iron sharpens iron, and we usually use that as it relates to men,
Mhm.
but iron sharpens iron even with women. And I think it's important for women to have a good, supportive network,
Yes. I
to
agree.
pour into each other
Mhm.
and to, to just build each other up. Women get bogged down with life and all of the responsibilities, and we need to pour into each other and to build each other up. And
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, how do we connect with you? We have a lot going on. How do we
yeah.
contact your church and all those things?
So I do have several pages. I have my Dr. Danita page on social media, on Instagram and on Facebook. Then I do have a page for Hope Haven and for Mending Hearts Family Counseling. So you can find me on any of those pages, as well as I have a YouTube channel as well, Dr. Danita Thompson. And
Okay.
so subscribe to my YouTube channel and you'll get
Mhm.
notifications for the series. I'm in episode two, season two,
Mhm.
and the third week is coming up of a relate. It's called Shipwreck,
Mhm.
navigating rocky relationships.
I
And
love it. I
yeah,
love it. And your assistant extraordinaire, Latoya Brigman, she has posted all of those
yes,
links and the things. So thank God for you, Latoya. Thank you so much. Well, Dr. Danita, I am so grateful. I don't know what to say. I am so grateful. I am so honored that you would take time out of your Saturday morning and have this conversation with me and be such a blessing to us. So I appreciate you. I love you. I thank you so much
thank you
for being
so
with us
much, Leontine, for
this
having me.
morning.
I enjoyed
Um,
my time.
yeah, I appreciate you. And Latoya, if you would like to share the video, this video can be shared from this group because it's private, but you can share the YouTube video for others to in the church or other people that can definitely learn from this interview. That would be amazing as well. So have an amazing day, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Have a fantastic Saturday. And we'll see you again next month for another episode of Wow, Women of Worth, Leadership Journeys of the Least Likely. God bless you. Love you.
God
Bye bye.
bless you. Thank you. Love you too.